Basically, yeah.
So like the concept, so the conversation we were having is morality possible to exist outside of religion, or does religion play the founding blocks?
Of course, statistically, atheist people, they are like the richest ones, and they are the least likely to end up in the prison. They are the most likely to help others.
Okay.
Should we go somewhere quiet? Would that be a good idea?
Go somewhere quieter? Where can we go?
Anywhere less loud.
Over there. Yeah. Mateusz. Yeah. So Mateusz, he just, I don't know, he's not coming. I thought he was coming.
Okay.
He might be coming. But the idea was
we can get it.
of like, so I fundamentally disagree that morality is possible at all times without any forms of revelation. I believe that revelation plays a very important role in revelation. And Mateusz, she was saying statistically that atheists do perform the less likely to be in prisons and all these things.
Yeah.
So we're in disagreement because I believe
atheists are
less likely to be criminals. That's what Mateusz.
Yeah,
Really?
because they are richer statistically, like the atheist countries like Sweden, I don't know, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong.
I'm hearing the happiness index shows that theists are happier than atheists.
The more happier they are.
Yeah, I'm not saying the two things can't coexist. It could be that theists are happier than atheists on average, and simultaneously that atheists, because they're richer, get in jail less. Both things could be true. Are you open to that?
Sorry, say that again.
Okay. Yeah. There's a happiness index. They do questionnaires on how happy you are.
So Scandinavian countries are at the top, right?
Right, and I think I hear that across the generality, the happiness index favours theists more than atheists.
Might be true.
Might be true. Okay.
Might be true, yeah, because they believe in something, right?
Yeah. So having a sense of meaning in your life, which faith gives you, seems to augment human nature in a positive way.
But I don't favor like this happiness index, as you mentioned. I don't favor it like it's the best index, right?
I'm not saying it is definitive.
Because what happens in these Scandinavian countries, there is no one at the bottom, right? There.
Yeah.
Like they have some basic flat. There are no homeless between them, and that's because this index, because of that, this index is skewed.
Yeah.
Like there are people not unhappy, but there is lots of average happy, and then there is some number of very happy people. But in US there is more number of very happy people, moderate number of average, and there is moderate average of unhappy.
Okay.
So there is more differences in US happiness, but in total, the Scandinavian countries, they have
But you
bigger
attributed
happiness.
it to affluence. You were saying that their level of happiness was connected to that. The amount of wealth, the propensity to go to jail was connected with their income. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I can believe that. I can believe that if you've got less money, you're more likely to go to prison.
But then also, is there maybe to do with the penal code and how law is constructed? We know really well that there are certain white-collar crime, they call it, right?
Yeah.
Certain crimes that poor people can't even commit. For example, tax evasion. Like someone who lives in a very poor area isn't really equipped to evade taxes, you know.
That's true, but
So
for me, I wouldn't consider it as a crime.
Okay, so
And
what tax evasion?
so rich people, they are probably more likely to tax evade, tax avoiding stuff.
Yeah.
But it's, in my view, it's not a crime.
Because
and in your view, it's probably a soft crime as well, right?
Sure. Well, I find it's actually quite a heavy crime if you're if you're not fully contributing to society. I think that's very bad, especially from a economist perspective. The country, and it goes back to morality, really, right? the moral thing here is, from an Islamic perspective, that if you're wealthy enough to give a particular amount of money away to those who have less than you, this is something that is encouraged. That's why I was a bit astonished when you said that atheists perform quite well when it comes to like altruism. I know, and these are statistics at the end of the day, so you know you can take them from everywhere. But I know, I remember looking at statistics in North America, in the UK, for the last 5 years, the group that has given most in charities have been Muslims, religious groups, and atheists. In fact, they have a problem that they say that we actually don't engage as much in like altruistic
I'm hearing the same
activities.
It might not be true, but I'm hearing it, and
and
I'd gamble on it fairly strongly that it's true.
that's and that there has to be ways of creating a community around atheists that has, if you like, more meaning to it. So you see the thing today with Sam Harris, that he's doing all this meditation thing.
Yeah.
This is actually not new. Auguste Comte, who's I think a French philosopher 200 years ago, and he is sort of the father of positivism. He was actually in favor of creating secular ministerial rituals where people come together, because he also recognized that there is this ritualistic thing, and we were talking about this, right? That human require. It is a need to exist in a society, to have something that bonds us together.
It's an asset. Can we agree on that? I'm not. Yeah, it's a need and an asset.
I think it's a necessity. I mean, if you look at what happened to us in the last two to 3 years with the lockdown, and the fact that people were, what's it called, divided. A lot of the experts are saying that the repercussions of...
Oh no, listen, we totally agree, but
Yeah.
if you were, back to the island example, if you were living alone on an island, I think you could still have a moral dimension, which we were discussing.
Yes, and I agree with you, but the island is in a very, very extreme... so talking about you, the only person on one island, right? And there's no one else.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a very extreme...
Yeah, but this is how you test it.
I think there will be no morality.
You think there's no morality on an
Yeah,
island?
because this person is looking for food, right, or something.
I
right?
think there
to
really is
survive.
morality.
So they would kill anyone who goes to the island.
Okay,
And
I'm defining morality as being in alignment with your fitra, and it is your fitra to be honest, and that you can lie to yourself. The primary lie that you can tell is to yourself. So although lying to other people, because we got onto this because I saw Bob do a talk once, and I'm not knocking Bob, I like Bob the Builder, and he said to somebody, well, you can't lie if you're alone on an island, yeah? And I'm thinking, no, that's not true. Most religions, certainly Christianity, is very attuned to the fact, look first to the mote in your own eye, you can lie to yourself. The primary level of deception is self-deception, and that can occur on an island even if you're alone.
But
so the
you know,
primary moral environment is
I did disagree with the definition of lying here.
Okay.
Because I would say it's more delusion than lying. Because lying really, like I was trying to explain earlier on, lying seems to be an act that involves a second person.
Yeah.
Like in its most basic definition. But I struggle as well, and I'm kind of with you here. Like, can you actually exert morality? How would you examine whether you're hubris or an arrogant person?
Okay, there's a great scene. Have you seen Castaway, the film Castaway? With Tom Cruise. Sorry, what am I talking about?
Ben Affleck. No, not
Tom
the
Hanks.
other guy.
Thank you very much.
Hanks,
With
yeah.
Tom Hanks. It's one of my favourite films,
Yeah.
right? So it's about a guy on an island, and
Yeah.
basically it's also an anthropology lesson if you look at it.
Yeah.
It's showing him climbing that ladder from learning how to use fire, doing a very, very interesting thing where he creates a totem with this basketball that becomes his friend and that he needs anyway.
Yeah.
It's a great film.
I've seen
Wilson.
that. Yeah.
Huh?
Nelson.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Wilson.
Everybody should see Castaway. It's a just blindingly good film. Anyway, there comes a point where he sits on top of a on the top of a hill, and you realise he may hang himself. He's considering suicide.
Yeah.
I think in that moment he's making a moral choice.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I think that choice is based on self-empathy. The degree to which, because what I think is missed in the heart of the way that morality is taught is the understand that it's not the essence of good is empathy.
Yeah.
and it's about empathizing with other people. But what you can miss is it also includes empathizing with yourself, and people mean that.
True.
Therefore, even if you're on an island by yourself, there are degrees of self-empathy.
Yeah.
You could just become a self-lacerator, you could become a drug addict or not. You will still be making decisions which impact a life form with qualia, which happens to be yourself. So morality is intrinsic, and the collective and the community are just leveraging that hugely. They're assisting it hugely, but at core, morality exists outside of cultural consensus. And that's consistent to all religious views, yeah?
But I would say you would still be deprived of scenarios, situations, and conditions.
Yeah.
There's this very famous hadith the Prophet Muhammad talks about. I don't know if it's in Bukhari or Abu Dawood, but it talks about there's two types of people towards the end of time. They will exist. It's the one who takes him away from society and goes to the mountains, not to be objected to the harm that he would have by existing in a society, and that person is doing it to protect his beliefs and and the Prophet acknowledges that, to isolate yourself. And then he speaks of the second person who is in society and endures the pain and the agony that he experiences whilst being in society. And the Prophet says that that person is better in degree because he exposes himself to uncontrollable situations.
I agree. I completely agree. I'm not advocating living on islands. I'm just saying that the philosophical grounding for absolute morality transcends cultural programming.
Sure.
Because it exists for any individual on an island with no culture to be programmed
Yeah,
by.
I agree with you. I do agree with you.
I'm just trying to validate absolute morality. Then you can see how that organically grows up into a culture, which will be reflecting that back to you and magnify the challenge, and it's all good.
Yeah.
But don't think that that morality is a function of culture primarily.
Okay.
It isn't.
Okay, I agree with you.
Agree on that?
I do agree with you that. What I was trying to say is that if you were to grow up on the island by yourself, there will be certain things that you will never be able to experience fully.
For sure. No, we totally agree.
Okay, cool.
We totally agree.
So, what was your take on it? Because you said like morality does not exist at all.
You think that?
I mean, you mentioned Tom
Tom
Hanks,
Cruise
right?
committing suicide.
Tom
Tom Hanks,
Hanks,
sorry,
Tom
committing
Cruise.
suicide on the island. I think
So
it's a moral decision.
he wasn't born there, right?
He crash lands on an island.
Yeah.
He has to learn how to survive. There comes a point where he becomes so desolate, you realise, hell, he's worked out.
I know, I've seen them.
Okay, fine. Now at that point he's making a moral decision, and let me be clear, I'm not saying it's wrong to commit suicide and self-euthanize. It's possible that actually for him the best decision, the most self-empathic decision might actually be to self-euthanize, yeah? I'm just saying he is making a moral decision. There is a better answer to the question, and it exists within a moral framework. And in this instance, he doesn't kill himself, and that was the best choice.
But the question is, if he actually lived on the island since he was born alone, which is very unlikely, being alone on the island, right? Because your parents had to die or something, right?
Cool. You're right.
He wouldn't commit suicide because animals don't commit suicide. He would be because he would be the only one on the island. He would be behaving like the animal. He would have no morality.
I'm a film fan. Have you seen The Wild Bunch?
What?
The Wild Bunch by Sam Peckinpah?
No, not this
It
one.
starts with a scorpion committing suicide because some kids put it in a circle of fire. It's the opening scene.
Really?
I believe they do that. I'm not sure, but I hear they do that. And I think the scorpion made the right choice.
So that's the only example of the suicide you
I
know
don't
about?
spend my life building up examples of animal suicide, but I couldn't help but notice one which might break your principle. I think the scorpion made the right choice. I'm not advocating killing yourself.
But is that actually accurate, or is it just like a scene?
It's in a film, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
whether or not animals
probably
can...
it's probably not true, right?
Okay.
Because one example in the movie
I'm not
doesn't.
sure, but I am sure that the human animal does make that choice. So within the framework of human beings, we get to make that choice, and I think it's a moral choice.
But only if you've previously been in with other people.
So you think your culture has to... No, because I'm arguing that you're going to make a choice which, when you look back on it, would be better or worse. You yourself would adjudicate that either improved the quality of your existence or not. You'd look back and wish you'd done one or the other with hindsight. Yeah?
Yeah.
So it's about empathizing with yourself, and there genuinely, in any given situation, there must always be an optimum choice. that you would look back on with hindsight and go, oh, I wish I'd done that. If you look back at your life from here now, you can look back at any decision you make with hindsight and go, yeah, good one, bad one, wish I'd done something different. That will always be the case, up right until the point of your death. And this is what I call the Minerva owl position. It's a position of looking back on your life. Hegel said something about the shadow of whatever happens when Minerva's owl spreads its wings. So if you imagine yourself at the very end of your life, looking back on all the decisions that you make, I think it's inevitable that you will be able to identify one particular life you'd lived that was better than any other. So if you imagine you lived a million different lives with all the choices you might make, it must be that in the future, as you look back, you go, you know what, that was the best one. You wouldn't see them as all equal. You would be able to pick something. Does that make sense? It seems inevitable. I can never tell you what those choices would be, but I think I can argue very strongly that that position must exist as inevitability of your nature. And that's what your fitra is aiming towards. It's aiming towards the best choice you would make in the future. Okay,
let's push this a bit further, because I know you guys are going to be in agreement, I will be in disagreement. So I believe, again, to reiterate the question, that morality is something that stems from revelation, religious revelation, text, scripture. That most of the morality that we had in the past, and most morality we will have in the future, is steeped with religious motives. I mean, if you believe that religion is going to disappear eventually, the motives will still be in existence, and I don't think they will ever be able to. So, like, I believe that you cannot entirely be moral without religion.
Got it.
For the lack of a better term for religion. I mean, for me.
But so you are missing the point. Like, I think this morality, you think about morality, it comes from religion. But I think morality comes from the nature.
Evolution.
So, nature, evolution, or something. I don't know. So generally, people, they gather into the groups, right? They live in the tribes, in the rainforest. Why they do that? Because it increases their chance of survival. So all this morality that we have today, right? People don't kill each other and stuff like that. It comes from that.
Well, let's use an example, right? If you look at like sort of the First Nation tribes in North America, I mean, they were very brutal to each other. You know, they were extremely brutal to each other. They're very brutal how they used to treat
within one tribe?
Against other tribes.
So that's different.
But they would also penalize people. If there were certain codes that you go against, you would get punished for it, right? So how do we deal with that? That's like the state of nature. That's the noble savage that Hobbes and Rousseau and all these guys talk about, that, you know, the initial state is the most purest state, and that society is what pollutes us, you know, our natural state.
Are you sure Hobbes was saying that?
Well, Hobbes says that that's why Hobbes
He's
says...
not saying it's our ideal state. I think he's saying it's our natural state, but it's pretty despicable.
No, he says that it's a despicable state, therefore we need something.
We need society. So it's it's a puritanical view of human nature that we need intellectually containing because we're fundamentally bad.
Yeah, I was lumping them together because that's where the debate is happening between the two fractions. So, you know, your example about like tribes and things, like, we know that tribes can be very brutal as well, based upon their own like relative rules that they make up. And that's why I feel like that's why Revelation is so mind-shattering and so norm-shattering, because what Revelation does is...
You're saying regulation or
Revelation.
Spiritual revelation.
Yeah,
revelation.
It shatters norms that may be, what's it called, normative and acceptable, you know.
Yeah. But you need some sense of God in order to provide a moral compass. I think this would be your position.
Yeah.
But these tribes also have their religion, right?
So maybe God was operating through that. I'm open to that idea. I don't know if Dawood is or not.
Yeah, so these tribes, sometimes, from like an Islamic point of view, these tribes may have had contact with something that was bigger than them, but with time, like the message gets muddled up. So revelation or scripture, main component is that it repeats there's like a long line of repetitions and reminder, because human beings are very forgetful creatures, you know. That's the reason why we still have wars to this day. I mean, we said never again, and then here we are in Ukraine and Russia again, having wars again. So because we tend to forget very quickly. So I believe that there is this supernatural being that constantly has revealed revelation, and that's why the messages are so similar. If you go to, like, say, Polynesian islands in the Pacific Island, and then you go to like Italy, like.
So you think the supernatural being is working in Polynesian tribes as well?
Yeah, I think at one point, yes, there must
So
have
then
been
you
some.
phrased it that, but then they've kind of lost it and it's become distorted in their perception.
Yeah.
They've downgraded.
Yeah.
Couldn't it be the other way? Couldn't it be that because the message of, I'll assume Islam is the best at the moment.
Yeah.
If Islam is the best message and you're a Polynesian tribe, you have been born with fitra, but you haven't been exposed to the ideas.
Yeah.
Therefore, the reason that their thinking is more blurred and confused is because their fitra is still struggling towards itself without the catalyst of the religion. Couldn't it be that?
Yeah.
So it's not that they've fallen from grace; it's that they're still trying to struggle
Oh
towards
yeah, no,
it
sure.
without
Sure.
the tool that you think they need.
Yeah. I'm not even casting judgment on those.
No, judge away. Judgment can be good. It's necessary.
I know, but I'm not trying to say that these people have fallen away from grace. I'm just saying that it is a circumstance, a historical circumstance, evolutionary circumstance that occurs, that movement and immigration and historical events like war or even environmental circumstances can create these situations where knowledge gets lost. For example, we all know about the idea of like the Library of Alexandria that was plundered and so much knowledge was lost. So I'm talking about like on that line, that these things can happen where human beings forget certain things and are then reminded to. That's why that's why we keep archives of like books and film now and all these things, because.
But you think absolute morality, your core point is you think absolute morality requires revelation. In other words, some connection with God, some understanding of, whereas you think morality comes from culture alone, and do you think it's absolute or relative? That's the point. Because we're on the same team seeking absolute morality, and we've never really chatted before. I'm suspecting that you think that morality is purely cultural conditioning and that it's non-absolute, it's just relative.
So I think morality comes from the group of people.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Is there any inherent reason why it's wrong to commit genocide? If that's your cultural proclivity, why is it wrong?
Wait, I don't understand the question.
The Holocaust? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so a culture decided that was correct behaviour.
Oh yeah.
Now, if values are purely generated by the culture, so there's no way of adjudicating the merits of the different cultural values, what would make the Holocaust wrong?
What would make? So
If it's a norm, if it's something that
it was a norm in Germany,
Yeah.
right, back in the day, but it wasn't the norm in the world, right? So
They got through 6 million, so it became fairly standard. And it doesn't matter because it's a thought experiment. Anyway.
So
how
then
would
your
you
question is
why is
would
genocide wrong in a world where values are purely a matter of cultural consensus?
Well, because you're harming other people, right?
But if your culture decides that harming other people is okay, particularly if you're going to be furthering your own tribe by wiping out another tribe, then why is that wrong? It would fit with Darwinian theory.
I guess there is no answer to that.
Which is why a lot of religious people, they're very attuned to this about atheists. The atheists don't really seem to have a solvent answer to that. Not something you can express, not something you can rationalize much. And the religions do offer answers to that, which is a level at which I'm very much on side with them. They're reaching for an absolute morality in a way that an atheist isn't. And if you,
Okay, but your absolute morality actually comes from this group of people, right? And
no, he would say it
like
comes from- he
like
would
the
say it
group
comes
of
from
people
God.
invented this morality
No,
that
he
you are
would say
talking
it comes
about.
from. Sorry, I won't.
It
speak
comes
to
from
you.
the
No,
God,
I would say it comes from
but
God.
in religion, the morality changes, right? Like back in the day, the Catholics hated like. No, not. Yeah, they there were like religion wars, but now there aren't. Like now, in the past they hated more like homosexual people. Now it's not so much, and in the future it's gonna be accepted. The religion changes, and so the morality changes, and then the religion follows.
That's just the institution changing. The morality would be a constant, and it would be within the text of the faith. And then different people might misunderstand, distort, or abuse that text. So when the Inquisition, the Catholic Inquisition happened, that was in opposition to the principle of love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yeah.
Okay? So they were clearly operating against their own doctrine. That was a perversion of doctrine. And perversion of doctrine will always happen in all religion, in all ideologies. Don't be surprised when it happens, and try and stick with the essence of the ideology or religion if you want to know its true value.
It happens among communists. If you talk to someone like Rosa Luxemburg, she profusely disagrees with Lenin or Stalin, right? Against war. She was very anti-war, and he's very war. And she says that this is not in alignment with Karl Marx and his ideas and Engels. So like that happens all the time. But I guess you're right in the sense that like religion is contained and it's maintained and it's propagated by human beings. You're right.
Yeah.
There is some element of truth to that. But to live in a world where there is no religion, and like it's so rich because we live now in the 21st century and we've gone through what we've gone through to now say, well, I've reached the epicenter of like it means to be human being, and now I don't need a God any longer. But the moment we do that, I find that there's just other problems that are rising, isolation. How are we going to deal with isolation in terms of like society, like these religious functions where we talked about this earlier, about bringing people together. And this is even if you think it's hocus pocus, it was still functional in the actual world. And to me, by the way, that's one of the evidence why I believe there is truth in it. The other thing, for example, that many European countries are suffering from, and also like Far East countries like Japan, who are very secular, right? Birth rate. This is like a big issue. Like the birth rates have plummeted in countries that you were mentioning where the GDP is very high. And in order to maintain humanity, we have to produce children. Or at least some of us have to. Like
The world population is nearly 8 billion.
Yeah.
It's doubled in my lifetime.
Sure.
That doesn't give me a feeling that, oh no, we're not producing enough people. It gives me the feeling that, oh dear, we're producing too many people.
I know. On the onset, on the surface levels, it may appear like this, but if you really look into like how generational, like birth rates and these things happen, is that, for example, in Japan, by 2050, Japan's population, which is about 130, don't quote me on this, but it's over 100 million.
Japan's about 120 million. I
Yeah,
think.
120.
It might be 120, 140.
Yeah, something like that. By 2050, it's going to halve. Because a whole...
Okay, that's
Yeah.
the problem. So you're
Yeah.
saying first
Why
world
is it a problem,
societies.
though? I don't see any issue with that. Like it's natural, right? It's
We're really
that's
shifting topics, just so you know. I'm happy to go wherever you want.
No, the reason why I'm bringing this in is because religion is in favor of producing and creating human beings and populating the earth,
Well, I don't think anybody in principle is against that, but there's an ideal threshold to populate too. There
Well,
must
if
be.
you talk to the guy over here, the antinatalist,
Hello.
oh yeah, so
How are you?
no, we have some good thing there, some
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
muscly.
Nice to see you.
I think you're gonna enjoy this conversation.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
it's
come
fine.
ahead.
No, it's cool because Kyle is. We're on morality and absolute morality, and you said last week to me suddenly that you weren't accepting Hume's is-ought fallacy, yeah? Yeah, and this sits at the crux of the debate on objectivity and objective morality. And I concur with you. I think the idea that you can't separate is from ought is fallacious, as Hume said, and that there is objective. I'm hoping there is objective absolute morality.
Can you give us an example
of what?
of an objective moral?
Well, the example I just used was I think that when Tom Cruise in the film Castaway was deciding whether or not to commit suicide on it. Sorry, why am I doing this? It's really strange. I wouldn't normally. Okay. When Tom Hanks was going to commit suicide in the film Castaway, I think he was making a moral decision. And he was on an island alone. So we can remove all the cultural stuff here. And I do think it was or wasn't a moral decision, but I think it was because he was self-empathizing and there was a better or worse choice he could make with hindsight. And that in that example, we're not divorcing is from ought.
So what was the ought derived from the is in that case?
I think it's inevitable that he can feel pain, it's inevitable that he can have varying qualities of life, and it's inevitable that depending on which choice he makes, he will get a better or worse quality of life, and therefore it's hardwired into the equation that not all choices have equal merit.
Would you say you're against euthanasia because of an objective?
No, I'm not,
moral...
no, because as I said, actually preempted it by going, I don't think it's always wrong to kill yourself, but I do think you're always making a moral choice. There will be situations in which the most self-empathic thing to do, I think, is to kill
yourself. I think by definition, morality is an absolute concept.
Well, I think some.
You don't say that. I don't know. Let's say China is good because it behaves better than Russia, for example. I don't know if that's true. But you wouldn't say that. You'd say China is good because it does this, which is good for human beings.
Yeah.
For example. You wouldn't always bring it back to a relative concept or a relative. Use an objective standard, I think. Yeah, which is independent of how other countries.
I think we do it instinctively, and yet we can't rationalise it. When we try and break it down, we go, oh well, it must all just be relativistic and cultural.
I would say you can derive an ought from an is, but to make it objective is a bit of a stretch. Nothing's really objective.
Oh shit!
I mean, nothing. Look, for example, the guy looking in the telescope at a planet somewhere, he's got a subjectivity there.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's subjective in the sense that speed equals distance over time. Yes.
I would say we can only perceive it because of empirical exploration through measurements.
Yeah, sure.
So it's always subjective.
Yeah, but as long as it rings 100% true in all frames of reference, I'll call it an objective absolute. And speed equals distance over time. Always does.
But then you gave the Tom Hanks example. That's not an absolute across. We're dealing with a specific scenario. So that's still not a good example of what is objectively a good moral. That's you're saying in that particular step. I want you to give an example.
Do you really want to know how we got?
Go ahead.
Do you really want to know how we got here? Okay, we really got here. Can I go there?
Yeah,
not?
please go.
We got there by discussing Kant's categorical imperative. Yeah. My understanding is that Kant created the categorical imperative as an intellectual mirror for the golden rule. Yeah. The golden rule being love thy neighbour as thyself, which is common to I think about 12 different religions, and it predates Christianity, but Christianity puts it forefront, but it's a really good idea. Kant was trying to encapsulate that in a more intellectual framework. His categorical imperative says, I think, roughly, act in such a way that you would will it that the whole world acted that way, yeah? Roughly. Yeah, that whatever you chose would be the law of nature of the universe you were in. So they're effectively the same statement, yeah? Framed in different ways. Prior to that, he came up with a hypothetical imperative, which was that you couldn't answer a moral question unless you plugged in certain variables. So, for example, is it wrong to steal? Is actually unanswerable. You've got to plug in the specifics of the situation, yeah? Is it wrong to steal if my family's life depends on it and it won't hurt the person I steal from? And yeah, then maybe not. On the other hand, as a generalization, it's wrong to steal. But you've got to actually ground it out in a specific situation by plugging in a variable, yeah? So you see the difference. Example A is categorical, is hypothetical imperative. You've got to plug in a variable.
This isn't so scientific. This is still very... It's like...
It's logically consistent.
Aristotle talks about this in rhetoric. He says, we want to make rhetoric a science. We don't want to know what will try and persuade one particular person. We're interested in what is persuasive in all discussion, right?
Yeah, sure.
And he gives an example. So we don't ask what will make Socrates healthy. Like medicine is not trying to learn about what will make him healthy. It's about trying to make everyone healthy. We want to understand what health is across.
Yeah, we want to understand the underlying axis.
So still, I go back to the example. Is there something like the statement "Don't steal," which could be universally applied?
No, I don't think
You don't
there
think
is.
so?
No,
So
I
there maybe
don't.
isn't this subjective.
No, but I do believe. No, because I believe you can square. I think he squared the circle with the hypothetical imperative. In other words, all the general rules we get from religion are things like don't steal, don't kill, don't work on the Sabbath. Yeah, I don't think any of those can be objectively bulletproof. You can always thought experiment a situation in which they fail. Yeah. I mean, pick any bad thing that you would say is wrong, and I'll just go, well, given a choice between doing that bad thing or doing that bad thing twice, presumably if you were compelled, you should do the bad thing. That will always be the case. Therefore, I don't think you can encapsulate an absolute moral principle in a
Maybe you
generalization.
can though. There was a book there's a really good philosopher, John McMurtry, still around actually. Yeah. And he said we should ground our morality in this idea that whatever extends three fields of life, you can say objectively that's good. So it extends the field of thinking, field of movement, and field of feeling. If that's what it does for humans, then we could say that's good. For example, lying, don't lie. That's what the Aztecs and the Incas used. It was one of their main commandments: don't lie, don't be lazy, don't lie, don't steal. Right?
Back to Kant.
But remember, if I'm at home with my family and they're upstairs, and this burglar comes in and says he wants to kill my family, he says, "Where are they?"
That
I'm gonna
is,
say, "Oh no, they're with my mother. I can't
that is
remember where
what
she
you're
is."
giving
Yeah.
is the Kant
You're not gonna
example.
say where she's upstairs. You know. You're not
Do you
gonna
know
lie.
that the example you're giving is the example Kant gave?
Right. Okay.
He
Yeah.
gave
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
example, if someone knocks on my door
Exactly.
and I'm hiding somebody, and he came to the conclusion, so this is example C, he came to the conclusion you should always tell the truth regardless, right?
If it extends the field of life and the movement of
Yeah, but he didn't say that. He just
should
went, you should always do it, right? So what we've got here is three assertions from Kant. The first one is a hypothetical imperative, you've got to plug in a variable. The second one is a categorical imperative, which gives the illusion, I think, that it's saying something which can be true for all time, but I think it's misunderstood itself. The third one is when he goes, you should never lie, and that's clearly bullshit. Hopefully we can all agree, yeah?
Sure.
So somehow Kant took a wrong turn, yeah? Because his
contradicting
three
himself,
statements,
yeah.
he's contradicting himself. So if we chuck out his idea that you should never lie and you look at the other two, my conclusion is that he misunderstood the categorical imperative, and that actually it is a hypothetical imperative because it says, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. It's asking you the question, what would you do? So before you can answer the question, his categorical imperative, you have to plug in the answer to the question, how would you like to be treated?
I think that's quite grounded
Does
in
that make
biology.
sense?
No, that last thing you said is true.
But is it not
It
just
is grounded in biology. You see
Yeah.
among animals this thing, reciprocal altruism.
Yeah.
You know, where animals help each other out.
Yeah.
So, like for example, the lions when they're hunting, the lion who did the most work, or the lioness actually, who hunted did the most effort, they usually will get the first share.
Okay.
And then the lion who has to protect the pride, he'll get given a large share as well. Then the lions who did the least amount of work don't get as much food. There is that hardwired thing in nature. Or like bats, for example. Bats bring in food for their other mothers, not just their own children. They give it to other mothers to give to their children. The mothers will do the same for them. They'll go and get, you know, it's basically like you do good to me, I do bad to you. And we have this principle, I think, as human beings. You're nice to me, I'm nice to you.
Sure.
If you do something bad, but you apologize, I forgive you. You keep that relationship. If you keep apologizing and then you abuse that, then maybe I just end that. But by and large, we have that.
Why then is the Holocaust wrong? If my tribe's life is improved, and all of the people you just mentioned, by me wiping out another tribe, within an atheist framework, why is that wrong?
Well, okay, this sounds a bit.
We had this point
It sounds a
before.
bit in bad taste to do this, but it did harm the Germans as well. Not that
No,
it should be
it's
the
a
prime
fair-
concern
it's
at
a fair
all. The prime concern is obviously what happens to the Jews,
It's a fair point. No, it's a fair
gypsies,
point.
gay people, and all the rest. But it harmed Germany. Germany was wrecked by the World War II for what it's done. I mean, it was like totally divided in two. It required West Germany actually to annex East Germany to get it back. It was like turmoil. It was mass ethnic cleansing of Germans from Czechoslovakia and Poland after World War II.
You're going to know all. I
So-
know you know Carl. You're
No,
so
no,
good
but
on
this is an
history.
example where, yes,
get
it
it, I
harmed
get
them
it.
as well.
I get it.
Germany took years to be rehabilitated and to join the human race again.
Sure.
That's why the European Union exists mainly, is to help Germany.
But then
come
there
back.
are also examples in history where the propagators are not necessarily harmed. So if we look at the reports that we have of Columbus wiping out entire clans on the island,
Agreed.
so there are examples where that fits in. So in that framework, how would the atheist framework?
But true, it wasn't an atheist, it was Bartholomew de la Casas who went to the New World and he said, this is horrendous what they're doing. Literally using these people as like human candles, burning them up, stringing them upside down, they're doing horrible things to the natives. There were people in the Spanish Empire disgusted by
But
it.
we're trying to identify.
He was a religious
What's
person.
your ethical axiom for why it's wrong?
Human needs, it's human needs. So if I need something, and we can measure this quite well as human beings, like we all need love, we all need respect, understanding, communication. We obviously need food, water. We have an instinctual desire to reproduce, which is quite common. We have all of our needs for pleasure, for fun. We need to express ourselves.
I agree with you
The
about
question is
needs.
the strategy how. But those things are objective. I think those are pretty much.
But how do you
universal.
I agree with you about the results.
Yeah.
I think they're objective as well, and you think they're objective. We all agree.
So human needs. I would ground it in biological, psychological.
But then how do you? But the transferable. How do you make it transferable, right? How do you make it from my tribe needs love, my tribe needs that, to like his tribe also needs that?
UN Declaration of Human Rights. It applies to Afghan tribesmen just as much as it applies
That's
to
a
us.
political tool. It's not a philosophical axiom. Where, with respect, trying to seek ontological axioms that we can then organically grow our politics out.
So the axiom I would use is whatever expands human thinking, human feeling, and human life, and human ability to move.
But
That
you-
should be considered
Well, Sam
our
Harris would
objective.
call it well-being. And he thinks morality is rooted in
There's
well-being.
no
and I
religion
agree.
or culture around the world that says it's bad for humans to eat. I mean, maybe the Jains do it in India where they starve themselves to death because of some mystical, desire to be ascetic as possible. But that's a very small minority of humans. That's like a tiny, that's a couple million people as far as I know, right? It's not a big group. But by and large, most religions, they accept human beings need food.
Yeah.
They say we should have that, so.
Do you agree with religion?
There are,
today?
we should strengthen the universals that we share with these cultures rather than the ones we have as our differences, I think.
No, because the basis of this is my claim was that it is very difficult to come to these conclusions without having revelation. In fact, a lot of the stuff that we talk about is embedded in religion. And I'm not going to say just religion, because that would be also factually and historically incorrect. If you look at the Magna Carta, for example, which is like an accumulation of like rights and ideas and ideals. It's not just Christianity. There's many other things from even pagan origin. But
common law, yeah.
yeah,
That's true, yeah.
But there seems to be something very strong that religion has done to human beings and it continues to do, that I feel like the atheists have not been able to answer.
I don't agree with that, but I have to run. I'm really sorry. Hope you have a good evening, guys. Enjoy the rest of the day.
That would have been the conversation.
I'm an atheist, yeah. But we're going to pick up that conversation. Sorry, I have to run. Do you know where that girl was who just left?
I don't know.
Sorry, no.
See you
I
guys.
see. Cheers.
Yeah.
Take care.
Because we're in agreement, so there's
Well,
nothing.
no, you and I. Well, we're not totally in agreement because,
Sure.
well, it's the way we configure our agreement.
Okay, sure.
I think that Sam Harris and the atheists understand the idea that human nature, that the moral imperative could be hardwired in human nature by nature. Yeah. You seem to think that nature couldn't do that and it has to come from an external God. And I'm counter-arguing, why can't it be God acting through the laws of nature? In which case, we're on the same team. Yeah. If the laws of, because we agree that whether you're an atheist or a theist, you agree that there are default laws of nature. Yeah. Thomas Aquinas and all that. Yeah. So even if you've got whether or not you've got an interventionist God,
Yeah.
why wouldn't God create the laws of nature to embody the moral imperative, as opposed to not including the moral imperatives within the law and only intervening? It makes more sense to build it into nature, so we can still concur on that.
Yeah. So I think my problem with that naturalistic sort of explanation is that I look at history here. I really look at what has happened and the things that we know from like this historical events, but also sociological scenarios in the world. That if you look far enough, you will find, and this is the beauty of hindsight that we have, that we can now broadly look at human history, recorded history, and look at how certain tribes or smaller types of civilization or lesser civilizations were living in nature and weren't able to come to those conclusions, like don't kill your baby in order to have rain come down you.
Yeah.
They were doing that for like centuries
Yeah.
at times. And it took, very in the most ironic way, it took other savages to come from Spain and kill these people and damn them to hell.
I've never heard it expressed that way before, but you're right.
Yeah,
you're
so
right.
Montaigne, I think it's Montaigne or Mustiger, one of the two, says that, and this is about noble savagery, right? He says, well, who are really the noble savages? If we look at our religious wars that we were conducting, just, and like where do we get this sense of like superiority when we go to these tribes who are like sacrificing people when we were just burning people at the stake?
Yeah.
Right, so that's
Two
like,
wrongs don't make a right.
yeah, so that's this like irony that exists, and it's just the human condition really here at play. And this is something that we have to like come to terms with. And I think Jordan Peterson talks about this, like the rawness of man, like the brutality that exists in man, and he advocates actually to revive that, with certain people to be.
Well, he wants to find a balance between. I mean, he's with Nietzsche. Go that there's no virtue in just behaving in a civilized fashion, unless you could behave in a less civilized fashion, because then it's not a choice. It's simply the limitation of your condition.
Yeah, and what he predicates it on that. This is
And
something
he's right.
something that's innate in us, right?
Yeah.
And then it has to.
You want to channel it in the most balanced and
Yes,
constructive way, and then
yes,
you're in alignment
yes.
with your fitra.
Yeah.
So you want to be an active agent who's capable of physical action.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you want to run around constantly bullying people or being destructive.
Yeah.
Would
So
agree on that.
so like playing devil's advocate and jumping on your line. I think when it's through nature, you're right in the sense that it happens through nature because humans are part of nature.
Yeah.
So if a prophet comes and interacts in its most fleshy human way, then that's part of nature. I agree with you.
So I'd be with you that religion leverages the chance of you finding your fitra, but that your fitra is embedded in nature. Anyway, does that work for you?
Yes.
So
it does.
whether or not if there's a God, he's working through nature and he created the laws of nature.
Yeah.
If there isn't a God, morality is still working through the laws of nature.
Yeah.
Either way, we can get an objective, absolute morality.
Yeah. But like the reason why I was like so adverse to it prior was because it seems as if, and if I look at, and this is like kind of biased because I'm really, I believe in this revelation, right?
Sure.
But it seems as if those people who do come with revelation sometimes do shatter or cause disruption in the status quo.
Yeah, but then
So
I'd say they're coming with false revelation. Just because they say it's revelation doesn't mean it is. Some very bad ideas get spread in very good packaging. That happens consistently.
Yeah, so I'm saying, so example, Jesus, right? Jesus going to the temple and he sees that the temple turned into like Times Square in Wall Street.
Yeah.
And he's disrupting the status quo there.
Yeah.
Like prophets or people who
Expel the money lender.
they tend to do that. So they're not always in an alliance with the human condition at the given time that they appear or emerge out of. So sometimes they're outliers, sometimes they're very outcasts.
Often the religious, your gurus usually have to stand outside the culture. Did you watch Hamza Yusuf with Peterson?
Yeah.
Because he talked about Islam's got a very healthy suspicion of group mind.
Yeah.
He said that, and it's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I mean, the religious virtue focuses on the individual and your personal choice. It's not a collective endeavour. It's about you and your relationship to your fitra. What everyone else does is secondary.
Yeah.
Don't fall into group mind.
It's true. But what happens, and this is a different example that I'm using from Peter Saville, who is like a graphic designer, a legendary guy, because I'm into arts a lot. And he talks about in the 60s and the 70s, what was happening was that the marketing agencies were not on trend with what was happening on the ground. They didn't know what the kids wanted.
Sorry, come again? Where are we coming from?
Okay, so this is a guy called Peter Saville.
I'm impressed that you know.
Yeah, it's just I'm a fashion designer, so that's why.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, he talks about like
My partner's a fashion designer.
Oh,
Anyway, carry on.
yeah. So he talks about a cultural moment in the UK in the 60s and 70s where like punk was becoming a thing, and like those the marketing agencies and those people who were in charge of producing or creating culture didn't know what to do with all of this because they were sort of like left behind. So they opened up doors to like. So he was like just coming out of university, and he says that he had absolute control to how to design music covers. So the very famous Joy Division cover, you know, the one with the...
Oh yeah, the wavy, not
Yeah.
decades, because then he made 2 albums.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one with the wavy thing. That's Peter Saville.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and he had full, absolute control, creative control, and it was like Disney World. I could do whatever I wanted,
Yeah.
but he explains it was because the old vanguard had desecrated, and a new elite of young people have emerged. And then he says, what happens is that then these young disruptors become the
They
new...
become the mainstream and the
Yeah.
conservative. Well, this
Yeah.
is a cycle of cultural life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The same thing is with religion. In the inception of religion, the Prophet Muhammad, for example, or Jesus, they are people who want to divide, want to disrupt culture, they want to create, they want to take us away from our tradition. And then when they're successful and reach critical mass, this scenario begins again.
Sure.
So now we need remarkable people again to then revive.
For sure.
Yeah.
Peterson literally blogged about this today. I saw on YouTube or yesterday.
Yeah.
He was saying, you know, you've got to have a balance between the logos, between the mainstream logic and questioning it.
Wow.
And it's always about finding the right balance. And he
Interesting.
says the problem is that balance is always changing. At any given moment, the balance is changing. So he said the question is, how do you keep up? And the
Yeah.
answer is, keep up. That's it. Your job is to keep track of how the balance is shifting.
I like that.
But that can make it sound like you're looking at a relativistic position.
Yeah.
But you're not, because
Yeah.
the absolute is keep the balance.
Yeah.
That's perpetually it. It's like if you're walking a tightrope, yeah?
Yeah.
You're constantly having to shift because there's an underlying absolute axiom is
Yeah.
I've got to stay on the bloody tightrope. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're agreeing.
I love this. We can end on keep the balance, right? To keep up is to keep the balance. I think that's
Yeah.
a very good way to end it. Tony, man.
Lovely to chat as always.
Before you go though, just explain for people who don't know what fitra is, because you referenced
fitra,
fitra.
So
yeah.
I'm using it a lot because it's a Muslim term that I think is common to most religions,
Yeah.
which is that you are born with a nature which has an ideal moral compass, an idealized self, that you're not just born that you can, that there is an ideal configuration of you and I'm screwing it, go on.
No, it's true. It's a natural disposition.
It's actually so simple.
Yeah, like a natural disposition to something that is bigger than yourself, i.e. pointing to an ideal...
Yeah, to an ideal. I mean, logically, there must be a best version of you. Yeah? There must be. There must be. If you imagine 1,000 different yous, at the end of it, you'd look back, look at all of them,
Yeah.
and you yourself would go, you know what, that was the best version of me.
Yeah.
Now that's hardwired into, it's not possible that it's anything other than that.
Yeah.
So your fitra is the thing in you which instinctively is trying to draw you towards the best version of you.
Yeah.
That.
And obviously, from a religious point of view, it's to Allah and that which Allah has instilled in you. But yeah, I think Tony, this was
great.
amazing. It was,
I
it was
love
good.
chat. I really love chatting with you.
Thank you.
What was your thing about his last thing? Hermeneutics. What did you
Hermeneutics.
say? You came up with a really good.
Yeah,
line.
but what was it?
I wrote it down. I fucking wrote it down. It was. I think hermeneutics is the engine of meaning. I think you said something
Yeah,
like
something
that.
like that. Something like that.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll work it out and come
But
back.
yeah,
with it
that
properly
could be
another
a
time.
topic for the other day because I think it's very important. Hermeneutics meaning the way how to understand things. I feel
Yeah.
like people underestimate how vast of like what type of universe that exists within you and
Yeah.
the universe that exists within me.
It's all about hermeneutics.
Yeah.
And if you want to do another chat about that,
We
kick
do
in,
that.
that'd be great.
We do that 100%.
Next week.
Thank you very much,
Cool.
Leon. Cheers, man. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Hey, that was. Thank you, man. So nice to have you back, man.
Thank you. That was great. I should check out the channel. Can I help or do anything?